our first topic will be about vulnerability assessment. Okay. Now, vulnerability assessment, you will find it in any job description. You know, in any job description, you will find that you should conduct a vulnerability assessment frequently. So it's something that you need to do. Okay, except that sometimes people do not exactly understand what should be the output of that. Okay, and in most interviews, they will ask about that vulnerability assessment. Did you conduct a vulnerability assessment before? What tool did you use? What was the output, and so on? Okay. Now, why are we doing vulnerability assessment? Okay. The point is, we are dealing with technology, with operating system, with application, with program, and those program, for instance, let's talk about Windows. When Microsoft released Windows, an organization and individuals start using those operating system, there is some security researcher, some hackers, they may find some weakness or some vulnerability or some weakness inside the operating system that can be misused, right? This vulnerability, some of them will be published in a database called CVE, and some of them will not be published right away, but it can be misused. And when Microsoft get to know that there is a vulnerability in their system, they will issue or they will release a patch. Same way Apple, right? Apple from time to time, they will say there is a new update. And sometimes they enforce you to install the update, right? This update, most of the time, it's a security update to fix some bugs in the code, right? Now, your responsibility is to follow up with that, okay? To follow up in two different ways. First way, it's to conduct a vulnerability assessment frequently to see if your system is missing any patch or it's vulnerable for a specific kind of vulnerability. You need to do that frequently. Okay, so you have a process of vulnerability assessment. In my case, most of the companies that I know do that every 6 months. Another usage for the vulnerability assessment is to do that whenever there is an announcement about a critical vulnerability, like WannaCry, if you remember this ransomware. There was a vulnerability in Windows and Office about this virus, and you need to run a scan to make sure that are you vulnerable for this vulnerability or weakness or not. Guys, anyone of you do not understand what is a vulnerability is as a main definitions. Vulnerability is a weakness. Okay, it could be a weakness in a program, but vulnerability means a weakness. Okay, so let's start by checking the vulnerability. One of your responsibility, you need to follow up with that. You need to be aware of the new vulnerability that was published about any new. So you should not work statically. You should dynamically be aware of that. Okay. So what we are talking about CVEs. Okay. So CVEs, which stand for Common Vulnerability, I think, Exposure or something like that. It's a database in US federal government that include all the vulnerability that was published. So for instance, you can go to CVE search. Again, we are talking about the vulnerabilities that was published by organizations. There is different kind of vulnerabilities that will not be announced. It will be underground. We also have a channel for that. So you can search for a vulnerability. For instance, this is a vulnerability database. You should keep that in your favorite. Okay. And here, as you can see, this is the library of vulnerability, the amount of vulnerability. What you can do if you need to search, for instance, for Windows Server 2012. Okay, all the vulnerability in Windows Server 2012. So it will give you an idea about all the vulnerability. Each one of them will explain this vulnerability will lead to what. This could lead for someone to execute a code remotely. This could lead to someone to connect remotely to the machine. It will give you a brief about it, and it will give you the batch that was released from Microsoft. It will give you some resources. It may give you some how it could be compromised, like the exploits that can be used. So it will give you details. It's not like you need to study all those vulnerability, right? But you need to register in some of the website, like for instance, there is two websites that I strongly recommend that you registered in: Security Focus and Security Tracker. Security Focus, especially this one, it's an amazing website actually, where it always publish all the new CVEs and vulnerability. Okay, you can search for the updated, or you can go and click on search vulnerability, and it will give you a drop list like this one. Sorry. Where you can select, for instance, Microsoft, then it will tell you, okay, which product in Microsoft. You can select Microsoft Windows, then it will tell you, okay, you will find here all the vendor, router, equipment, operating system, any vendor will be found here. Usually like, takes some time. The good thing about this website that you can write or register in the website, and they will send you update wherever there is a new vulnerability in some of the system. So they have an option, it's free, but I strongly recommend that you will keep track on that. The list is huge. All product, you can get the vulnerability of any product from here. I'm just giving you an idea before starting to use the vulnerability assessment tool and show you what should be the report, how the report should look like. Where is Microsoft? Guys, you can see my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Microsoft. Unbelievable. Every time I have to get lost. Yeah, here you go. Microsoft. So if you select Microsoft, you will find in the second drop list all Microsoft product. So you can select which product you want, or if you keep it Microsoft, it will give you all Microsoft vulnerability. So if you are searching for Windows vulnerability, for Office vulnerability, you can search here the product. And if you are searching Windows, in the third drop-down menu, it will show you like different Windows version and so on. So this is in general what you need to deal about it. You don't need to dive into the subject deeply, but you need to understand what is exactly your responsibility, okay? So my point here, before we start the vulnerability assessment, that every day there is a new weakness in systems. Every day they find a weakness in Apple or iOS or in Windows or in Office, right? Some of them will be published on some of the websites like that, and some of them will not. Your responsibility is to monitor and to follow up that frequently by doing a vulnerability assessment frequently. It should be done at least twice a year, okay? Now, how can we do that? There is a lot of tools who's doing a vulnerability assessment, but I selected one free tools, and then we're going to use another tools. But if you know how to use one, you're going to know how to use any tools of vulnerability assessment, because the purpose of that or the skills here is not how to use the tools, is the result. How can you analyze the results and how can you work on it? Okay. So I sent for all of you guys a video on how to set up Nessus. Did you install Nessus? Did you receive my email, by the way?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So you're going to need to install the software. Nessus is one of the best vulnerability assessment tools. Okay. It has a free version and a paid version. The free version, it's working, it has a limitation around 16 machines. So if in your organization you only have 16 machines, it's fine, you can use it. Okay. While the paid, they have a professional and expert, it's not cheap. It depends, right? So I hope you all install Nessus and do a vulnerability assessment on your network, on your virtual network that includes the Windows Server and client, and send me the report that I'm going to show you right now after modification. So let me start by running the application and let me explain how it works and what we are expecting from it. Okay. Now, in our case, the free version will be okay because we only have few virtual machines, right? So I have like 2, 3, or maybe 4 virtual machines. I don't need more. But if you have a bigger network, you're going to need to have more. For some reason, it's not working fine on the Explorer. So you can copy and paste it on the Google Chrome. So here you go. Any one of you guys get a chance to install the tool?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, so here is the login screen. I want you to bear with me. Even if something is not clear now, it will make sense within a few minutes. So please bear with me. Okay, so I log in, and once you, once you log in, you will find here your dashboard where you can manage all your scan. Okay, now in the scan here, you have different policy, and this is a good thing about
Nexus?
About Nessus, yeah, I'm sorry. So if we start a new scan, for instance, okay, you will find here all type of scan, and you can even add more policy. Here is the host discovery. If you need to scan one machine, the ones that we are using most of the time is the network basic network. We have also, we are using this one. I'm gonna show you how we're gonna use it, advanced dynamic scan. But you're gonna find some, for instance, compliance scan, because some compliance will have specific requirement related to credential, related to encryption, related to password policy. So sometimes, especially for instance, PCI DSS, they have a policy of that. So if you in your organization are implementing PCI DSS, you're going to need to run this specific scan, because it scan for specific controls. Okay, you can create one scan and add, for instance, ISO 27001 policy. But I don't want you to start with that. We have also mobile device management scanning, because all of those are paid, by the way, are not free. So you can customize it so it will not scan only and give you the results as weakness or vulnerability or whatever, but it will also scan if it comply or not. If you are following a specific standard like PCI DSS or HIPAA, it can scan your network according to their requirement. Okay, but for simplicity, we're going to take now the basic scan. Okay, so we're going to click on basic network scan. And from here, you're going to start putting the scan information. Now, before I start scanning, let me see, this computer is a member of which network. So I'm going to open the command line and type ipconfig to check the IP of my machine, the IP of the server. By the way, Nessus can also run on a Windows 7 or 10 machine, but it has to be 32 bytes, and it will not. I don't recommend that. Better to install it on a server. So I can type ipconfig, and I can see the IPs. So my net IP is 192.168.227 and 146, which means I belong to a network that starts with 192.168.227. Okay, for people who don't have that much of network background, this is the IP of the machine, which is like the name of the machine. And the first three number of this name is considered the ID of the network. So all the computer connected to the same network will start with those three numbers. Okay. I think someone is trying to join using the personal email, so allow me to let him in. Guys, if you don't mind, could you handle that if someone is trying to log in using his personal account?
I already did.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so getting back here to the Nessus, here you should put the name. Now, when it comes to vulnerability assessment, you have to be clear about name and description. Do not leave the description empty. So, for instance, we're going to make it 30 by date, for instance, 2021 network scan. So, because after a while, you're going to have a long list of scan. And if you are used to type random name, it will give you some hard time searching, right? And here you can type full network scan for basic network scan. So write a small description on that. And then here you need to put the IP. Now, if I just put the IP of my machine, which is 192.168.227.146, it means that, I'm sorry, 46, it means that it will only scan this machine. But I need to scan all the computer inside the network. So I'm going to put here 1 and then /24. Okay. Now, guys, if you have a problem with the IP and subnetting, we're going to do a session for that, for people who have a problem for that. And I'm going to need the help of the technical team as well, so we can divide the team to smaller team. So by doing that, I'm telling him I need to scan this list of IP. Now I have different options. I can upload the text files that include all the IP, because in big infrastructure, they may have a big list of IPs. So instead of writing all the IP or the full network, I can upload a text files that include, for instance, 20 or 30 IP. Okay, and that's it. Now I can save the scan and run it later, or I can launch it right away. It will not take time because I believe we only have like 4 or 5 machines. No, keep in mind that you are doing that every 6 months or every 4 months. Okay, on the critical machines, most of the time it's going to be on the servers on your organization. So,
but the organization needs to have the Nessus, right?
Yeah, you need to have a tool. You can use the Nessus, the free version, if it's you have less than 16 server or machine, or you can use any other tool, pay tool. If it's a big organization, you need to have a licensed tool.
Sir, actually, one issue I faced during the installation is I was not receiving the email during the installation. I was not receiving the email. So
you didn't get the email for the installation?
No, I received the email after installation. For generating the key, we had to receive an email from Nessus. Right?
Okay, good is that you raised that. The problem is sometimes they are not sending the email, or it takes time, so you can do something else. Any one of you guys did face a problem with getting the key?
I got the key to my Gmail.
If you face a problem with that, just search for Nessus Essential.
No problem.
Essential activation. No, actually, you can register from here, and they will send you a key. So if you are not able to get the keys the right way, you can go to their website and register there, and they will send you the key from here. Register because this is the essential version, and you will get it right away by email.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone received it in a different way? Okay. Just make sure to run the tool, because it's useful, and you need to be aware of and to get familiar with it. Again, in an interview, they will never ask you about how to use the tool. They may ask you about the name. What tool did you use for vulnerability assessment? You can mention Nessus, because Nessus is a very powerful tool, by the way, and very expensive, the paid version. But it's about the result, what result you will be getting. So I'll give it a few seconds or couple of minutes, because we don't have that much of machine. Or we can check another scan, a previous scan. So for instance, this scan that I did this morning, just to keep a result. Once it's scanned, it will give you a result like that. Those are the machine found inside the network: 143, 129, 234. Okay. Keep in mind that I kept the Windows 7 open, also the virtual machine. So you will have more machine to scan. Okay. And it's showing you the machines that has vulnerability. Like red, it means this is a critical vulnerability. You need to work on it. Orange is high, and yellow it's medium, while the blue one is normal. So you're going to need to work on those three, right? So as you can see, we have machine with different color. So if you click here, you will get to know the exact situation. It will give you details about the vulnerability found in those machines. Now, clicking on any of those, for instance, let's take this one. It's showing you that there is a service here using an old version, and you need to install the update, or you need to patch it, or to install the updated batch from Microsoft. He's telling you in the description that the remote Windows hosted has Microsoft Service block 1 vulnerability. There is, I think, here is suggestion output. So it's going to tell you that if, yeah, solution, apply the available security update. So there is an update for that, right? So what do you need to do about that? Because 90% of the result will be related to updating your system or operating system. What should be done? What should be the next step? First, as we agree, we will not manage all of them because it's a big list of vulnerability. We need to manage the critical and high and medium, right? And most of them, as you can see, are going to be related with update. They are missing some patches. They are missing some update, right? Who's doing the patches or update is the network team, because patch and update is not done that easily. You do not just allow the update on the server. You need to update them on a server and test it and then push them. It's a long story. What is your responsibility here? You were able to find some weakness in the server here, right? It could be some setting, it could be some service, but 90% it's going to be patches. Okay, so what I should do, I should first export this file. You will find an option here for exporting. See, export, and then actually report. You can take it from report, and you can download it as a CSV file, right? And it will download the file, all the result of this vulnerability scanning inside a file, CSV file. Let me show you how it's going to look like. This is the CSV file. It has the date, the number, the CVE that was found, the IP of the machine, what needs to be done, suggestion. Of course, in a big network, the list will be quite long. Okay, so what should I do? I mean, should I keep it like that? Should I send it to someone? What should be done here? And the most important, as I told you, is the last one, which is telling you about the solution. Okay? You should start organizing this file to become like that. So you're going to need to filter the file, and you're going to need to organize it and start specifying the CVEs, critical and medium, and the description. You are getting that from the report. You are just organizing. And most important, the solution, which is already in the report, that Microsoft has released this patch that need to be updated. Okay. And after doing that, for all the machines that need patches, you send it to the network team. Okay. And before conducting a new vulnerability, you need to check with them if they fix those vulnerability or not. So here's the point. It's not that you need to study the architecture of the operating system and to understand this specific attacks and to understand what is remote code execution or what is buffer overflow. You will understand that, and getting any knowledge will be good. But you don't need to go that deep, right? The report is showing you that some system has some weakness, and it's showing you how it could be fixed. So you are taking this report and you are sending it to the concerned team so they can patch their system. So 90% of the result usually is system updates, or I'm sorry, operating system update. Because especially Microsoft, you know how frequently they release update and how frequently the new CVEs show up. So you need to be updated, and you need to do that frequently. Here, guys, is the process, is what we are doing clear? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So just to simplify, okay, one more time, vulnerability assessment, it's a tasks that need to be done frequently. Okay, we are checking the vulnerability in our system. Okay, now situation could be a little bit different. For instance, right now he's getting me only the vulnerability in Microsoft Windows because the machine itself doesn't have any application installed. But what if you run a vulnerability assessment on a machine that has Microsoft Office installed, Adobe Reader installed, many applications installed? The list will be quite long because he's going to get you all the vulnerability in all the application. you're going to still need to organize that. You're going to need to put the Microsoft vulnerability in one tab, all the vulnerabilities that need to be updated from Microsoft operating system, and all other application in another tab. Okay, so don't make people life harder. Try to simplify for them. So they may have, for instance, Acrobat Reader or Adobe. Adobe also one of the applications that is always vulnerable. Okay, so you're going to keep to put it on a different sheet. Tell them this need to be updated, but usually the criticality, the most criticality will come to Microsoft operating system and the amount of patches they release. And so you don't have to worry about, you are not the one who will do the patching. It's a different team, but you need to tell them what are the patches and how critical it need to be done. The high and medium and critical need to be done, and you should not like be flexible on that. So you did a vulnerability assessment, you prepared the report, you give it to the network team. Next 4 months, you're going to do the second quarter vulnerability assessment. You tell them, okay, show me the previous report. Did you install the patch? Show me the windows that the patch has been installed. If you found that one of the critical patches or high patches has not been installed, you have to escalate. Okay? Do not accept, no, we will do it next time. We will do all the patches together. So this is quite important to understand what is CVEs, what is the vulnerability, and how we should monitor and follow up frequently and do this vulnerability assessment. Even in the ISO 27001 project, one of the deliverable, if you remember, was a vulnerability assessment. You need to conduct a vulnerability assessment to the organization. Okay? Any challenge? Okay, let me ask you this question.
Sir, I have a challenge.
Sure, please go ahead.
When I was trying to install it, my system is saying that because it's a public, I may get some attackers. They say attackers might be trying to steal your information from local host, and then so because of that, I couldn't continue. So this is a challenge I had.
It's a good point. For all this kind of application, Samuel, better to install them in a virtual machine. Do not install them. This is a very safe application. Okay, except it has a lot of database of vulnerability and CVEs, so it may get you some kind of errors that may confuse you. But from now on, do not install any of those applications in your physical machine, because sometimes it will prevent other application to run or something like that. Install them on a virtual machine. Okay, you can test, you can install, it can crash, it doesn't matter. It will not affect anything on your physical machine. So repeat the step, but install it in your Windows Server 2012 machine.
Okay, because I saw I was a video, so I followed exactly what you did. Okay, thank you.
Oh, welcome. Okay, so this is the first case, which is the normal vulnerability assessment. I'm sorry? Okay. Sometimes the case is different. Sometimes we have guys, is someone asking or someone is talking and the mic is open? It's because of vulnerability inside Office operating system. So sometimes there's going to be an announcement about specific CVEs. So assume that, let's take any random CVEs and assume that this was announced, and you get to know that there is a new critical vulnerability showing, right? Okay, let me do it in a different way. Let's go to the CVE database and let me search for one of the new CVEs. So as I told you, you need to have some threat intelligence source, and I'm going to give you many of them, but I just show you a couple of them, but I'm going to show you some more sophisticated as well. Okay, so let me open the CVEs database and search for a new one. How can I search for a new one? I'm just going to write 2021. it will get me all the new or the CVE that was published or announced in 2021. So assume that this one is the CVEs. Of course, I can search for Microsoft 2021, will give me the Microsoft vulnerability in this year. So instead of having it this way, let me do it in a separate way. Okay, so here, what's going on here? Okay, so I can search here for Windows 2021 for vulnerability, all the vulnerabilities that was. Nessus will update himself with the vulnerability automatic. This is one of the benefit of it. So it usually will have this list of CVEs updated to his database. Okay, but let's assume that a critical announcement was someone is playing with my keyboard and mouse. I don't know who, but I don't think this is the right thing to do. Okay, so here is a vulnerability in an operating system. So let's take this one. Okay, so I'll copy this vulnerability, copy, and we're gonna paste it or search for our actually, here you go. So in this case, what I need to do, I need to search, is any of my machine have this vulnerability or not? It could be in Office, it could be in Windows, but in this case, I'm not scanning in general. I need to scan for a specific vulnerability. So sometimes they will tell you, or you got an announcement that a new vulnerability has been published, a very critical one. So you need to check, is any of my machine vulnerable and can be compromised or not? So in this case, I can go to my scan one more time, old scan, I'm sorry, and go to a new scan. But in this time, I'm going to check I'm going to select the advanced dynamic scan. This scan allows you to search for a specific vulnerability. I can write the name of the vulnerability here, for instance, and can write any description, scan for this vulnerability. And I can put the IP, one or more, or the full network like I did before. Okay, and click on, where is it? Yeah. See, he's asking you before launching, which CVE are you searching? So you can put here the full CVE or even a part of the CVE, right? So before launch, you have to specify which vulnerability you are searching. And he's going to start scanning for this specific vulnerability in the full network that you specify. So this is also a case, and especially right now, we are doing that a lot when it comes to, because from time to time, they will announce about this critical vulnerability or something like that. So you need to search if it's going to be, if it's available in any of your system or not. So did you get the point? Yeah. So is it clear, guy? The different way for using vulnerability assessment, if you are doing it frequently or if you are searching for a specific vulnerability. Now, regardless what tool you are using, because all the tools will have the same capability. Scanning, identifying a vulnerability, issue a report. But the point is, first, you should not take the report out of the box and send it to the concerned team. You need to categorize it according to the criticality of vulnerability, and you need to send it to the right team, and you need to follow up. This is a process that we are doing, and it's very, very important to get practice to it. Okay, any questions so far?
Doctor, I have a question, Doctor.
Sure.
These are all, signature-based vulnerability, right? Already
Yes.
reported. So
Yes.
what about what to do with the zero-day vulnerability?
Zero-day vulnerability actually will not be discovered by vulnerability assessment. Okay, but it all depends about your source of threat, which I'm going to share with you because we also have some underground source of threat that's showing us some of the 0 days. But 0 days also will be one of the challenges that we'll be dealing with in a normal way. Right now, we are talking about the operational task, things that we are doing frequently. It's a part of your task, and you need to know exactly what to explain in an interview. Did you do a vulnerability assessment? What tool did you use? What should be the result? What was the finding in the result? What is the challenge in vulnerability assessment? This kind of things, okay? So again, we are not focusing about the tool, but I want you to get familiar with the tool, to see the report, to see the output, to know how to filter the report and so on. Be configured in a virtual machine. So I'm going to show you how to configure it. But right now, I just want an easy tool that you will not have any problem using it. But there is a lot. There is Nexpose, there is Rapid7. Yeah, I installed Rapid7. You can even install it from their website. They are allowing that for free. But it's going to work for a specific amount of time. But also you can install it on a virtual machine. So I kept, this is a formatted report, right? Where I kept all the vulnerability categorized. This is the full result. Then those are the Microsoft patches. So Microsoft team can work on it. Those are other patches, other Oracle patches, if there is any Oracle. Those are Adobe patches. So I categorize them according to the product and then according to the criticality. What are the patches that is critical to be installed? So see, this is a report, a real report, while this is the report that we get from the application. Okay, of course here we have fewer machine, but it's, see, if you send it like that, no one will know exactly what needs to be done. Okay, so you need to fine tune that. Some of the vulnerability assessment tool will have more capability reporting, but still you need to know exactly what you are asking the team to do. Okay, and vulnerability assessment could be or could have a different scope. For instance, if your company has developers, have programmers, I mean, you hire people to do program for you, programs and website and web application. Okay, in NASAS, there is a tool to scan the web application. So you should not allow any application to be published online unless you do a vulnerability assessment for it and send it to the developer, and developer need to fix those bugs or those vulnerability. But I don't want to go through this area now. Okay, so as you can see, getting back to our scan and new scan. So sometimes we are doing that for our application team or developer team in case we are an organization who have a developer of software. So we can conduct a web application vulnerability assessment to check the weakness in the web application and send it to the developer to work on it. And you should not allow the application to go live unless you do another vulnerability assessment and to make sure that those vulnerability does not exist. But let's keep it simple now, and then we're going to start enhancing, project by project. Okay, is the vulnerability assessment task clear for you guys? Okay, let's move to the document before moving to the next subject. And I just want your feedback about what I'm going to present right now. Just tell me today, after taking all those sessions, are you comfortable doing that? Do you understand what it means or not, and how to do it? First one is to develop and implement and maintain an information security framework. Can you do that? Can you write in your CV that you can do that?
Yes.
Okay. Any other opinion?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Excellent, excellent. Second one, collaborate with information technology team to prepare disaster recovery. No, we didn't cover that yet, so I will skip this one. Third one, maintain all security system and their corresponding or associated software and so on. Can we do that? And in which way? Don't tell me just yes. If we are talking maintain all security system, what does it mean? Just give me keyword, couple of keywords.
Did vulnerability assessment? Oh.
No, this is not the right answer for this point.
Oh, okay.
Asset management.
Yes, I agree, but let me give you that in a different example, right? We are talking about system, right? Like computers, database, operating system, servers. How can you make sure that those devices are by default secured?
By applying the controls.
The basement.
Baseline, not basement. Basement is different story.
Baseline, sorry, yeah, sorry.
Baseline.
Baseline.
The answer of that is the baseline. I have a Windows server in my infrastructure. Does it have a baseline? Do you apply the baseline on it? Yes or no? We have an Oracle database. Does it have a baseline? Yes or no, right? So I can check the baseline. I can get that from our share folder or from Internet Security Center and check. Show me that you have those sitting in place, right? So baseline. Okay. Maintain an up-to-date knowledge of the IT security industry, which means you should be aware of the new vulnerability. You should be aware of the new attacks, the new vulnerability. Are you comfortable about that today? It will take you some time, but do you know the source from where can you know that today Microsoft announced a critical patch or a new vulnerability was published that is available in Microsoft Office 365? You can know that today or not?
Yeah, going to security focus and other CV patch list.
Yeah, you should have a source sending you this kind of information to be aware. You should not be kept behind, right? So when you register in those website or similar website, security focus, security tracker, those are free. Some other websites are paid. It will send you those kind of updates, and you should be aware of that. And if you find that there is news about a new critical vulnerability or a new critical weakness, then you can run a critical vulnerability assessment task to make sure, are we vulnerable or not? Okay. Accordingly, what you're going to do if you get to know about a new vulnerability?
You run vulnerability assessments for that particular vulnerability.
And if you found that some of the machine has this vulnerability, what you're going to do?
Generate a report and ask to the appropriate thing to fix the.
Exactly, not to fix it, to patch it. Patch it. Okay.
It, yeah.
Let's do the same terminology. So, are you okay with this point? Okay.
Yes.
This, of course, including awareness of the new any revised security solution, improve. You need to be in the field. Security every day we have something new. Okay. Supervise all investigation.
This is incident management.
Exactly, incident management. So incident management is not just to log in or to log the incident, right? But also to investigate, to know how it has been closed, what preventive action, if the incident happened 2 times, why it happened 2 times. Maybe you didn't take the proper preventive action in the first place. Okay. Okay. Tell me about this one. Routine performing security self-assessment. What does it mean?
Vulnerability assessment.
It's one of them, vulnerability assessment. Okay. Vulnerability assessment can be considered, except here they wrote that in a separate item. So I believe they meant something else.
Continuous monitoring. Continuous monitoring.
No, I said
awareness.
That you are continuously monitoring. And this is quite important, guys. We are not just like taking action if an incident happened. We need to be proactive. So if you monitor frequently, if you are doing frequently audit, if you run baseline checking, if you are auditing the system, every all those points will cover this one. Okay. This one I think is straightforward to
Dr.
make sure. Yeah, please.
I'm sorry, I have a question. When we say continuous monitoring, somebody mentioned auditing, and earlier on you said, well, so what are we going to do? Okay, if audit is not continuous monitoring, so what? Give us an example of continuous monitoring.
Continuous monitoring include many things. For instance, I can monitor the logs, the same solution we didn't cover yet, but I can monitor the log for any suspicious behavior. I can review the accounts frequently to fulfill the access control. Audit, it's still a monitoring, but actually it's more as a reaction, not a reactive. I mean, when you do an audit, you will end up with finding, which is problems that happened, right? You are not preventing. You getting my point? So when I'm conducting an audit, and I find, for instance, that they do not review the log frequently, they do not update their asset management, they don't have a proper risk assessment. By doing that, did I prevent this from happening, or I'm finding some of the weakness and some of the non-compliance?
The weaknesses, you're not preventing.
You got my point? Yeah, so we are checking the non-conformities, the things that is not in place. Monitoring, it's to prevent. So for instance, if I monitor the log frequently, every week I'm monitoring the log, and I found that some people is trying to log in usually after working hour, I can take some control, right? I can do some investigation. So I got that from monitoring. If I'm monitoring, for instance, what else besides the access control, besides the log management? The same solution. And we found, for instance, that we have a lot of alert coming from a different country, some kind of malicious attack coming from it. So I can take some proactive action, so we will not be compromised. So monitoring, it's kind of general little bit, but you are getting the concept, right? Yeah. Monitoring here means that vulnerability assessment, of course, it's considered monitoring, except here they wrote it in a different one. So that's why I don't want to explain it here. But the point here is that what I felt or what I want to clarify is that whatever you are doing, it needs to be done frequently. So if we are doing vulnerability assessment, it's not just done whenever there was an announcement about a critical vulnerability. No, we are doing that every 6 months and fix it. Okay, it's a proactive activity. If we are reviewing logs, we are doing that frequently. Every 15 days, we are taking random logs and review them, and so on. Okay.
Professor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the editing to or the auditing to sometime it means the third party coming to your company to audit you too. So that one may not be like assessing your system to find out if there are some vulnerabilities for you to resolve.
Samuel, it's important what you mentioned, because actually internal audit is important and external audit is important. You cannot just have all the audit internally. Okay, you need to also involve an external party to audit your system, because sometimes, internal audit may not get the proper result. So internal and external audit need to be in place. Okay. Managing information security project, we already are doing that. Project like ISMS, we're going to start a new project today, upgrade. So this is not really something to explain. Ensure system security and the integrity to the company. Also, I will consider that quite general, but it's also under making sure that the baselines, the best practice, the checklist are in place. Okay, what about that? Data compliance regulation. Are we okay with that? Federal compliance. Are we okay with this point? So
you
if
can
we are,
explain.
yeah, for instance,
Laws
okay.
in this.
I'm sorry.
Well, this point talks about federal, state, or local laws. So
Exactly.
for particular countries, or for which particular country?
100%, I agree, Moses. So for instance, if tomorrow you get an interview in a healthcare in US, before going there, you're going to need to read HIPAA and to know their requirement. And when you go for an interview, you're going to tell them, yeah, I know that as a healthcare, you are following HIPAA. While if you are going for a bank or you are going for a financial institute, you're going to have an idea about PCI DSS. And same way we did with the ISMS or ISO 27001. So you need to understand what compliance or standards this organization is following. Okay. Okay. What about this one? Perform a routine vulnerability assessment. Yeah.
Yeah, you said you were going to give us the standard, the Dubai city uses.
No,
ISR.
Dubai, I will not be able to give that, Moses, but I'm going to give you another standard and we're going to map it to the ISO 27001. So I will announce about that after the session today. Conduct a vulnerability assessment, but thank you for reminding, Moses, it's very important. Routine vulnerability assessment. Are we okay with that today? And coordinate for resolution. With whom? Who should resolve that?
Network
team.
Application team, whoever is in charge. Okay. Yeah. But see, it's quite clear. So now if you get a question about that, how can we handle that? What is the result? Who's the concerned team? We can, right? Work closely with, now this is the security provider day to day. Okay. This one we didn't cover yet, the log and the same solution. We can have a session for that. But for me, the important point, very, very important point is the last one. It may seem the simplest point, but this is the most important point, training awareness. Okay. Whatever you are doing, vulnerability assessment, implementing same solution, implementing firewall, which we didn't done yet, whatever you are doing, if you don't educate the people in the organization, it will end up with a very bad results. And conducting awareness is not that easy. You need to have a proper policy and get an approval and then prepare a presentation or prepare an awareness for people, explain to them their role and responsibility, the main policies that they should follow, what will happen if they didn't follow the policy, give them an example, and most important, you need to measure the effectiveness of the awareness. I saw many organizations, they just do few lectures to their employee and that's it. That's not acceptable, and it will be a compliance in any organization. You need to have a KPI for the awareness. You need to conduct the awareness session, a planned one, and then you need to measure the effectiveness. You can give them a questionnaire. You can do a social engineering to see how many people clicked on the link. But whatever awareness you are doing, it needs to be measured. Is it successful or not? It's not just the training. Okay. So, in general, how comfortable are you with the job description? We still have some point remaining, and this is going to be your assignment today. I want you to create an Excel sheet and go through point by point. Whatever is clear for you is fine, and whatever is not clear or we didn't finish yet, you can copy it and paste it in the Excel sheet. Because we're going to have different results. Some people will understand some point, some people will not understand some point, but consider if this is your job description tomorrow, and you sit for an interview, can you talk about that? Okay. So your next assignment, besides the assignments that I'm going to give you, it's to create an Excel sheet with under your name and start checking subject by subject or topic by topic and see what you are comfortable doing or you did already or you know how to do it and how to explain it and what is not yet clear for you. If it's not covered yet, no problem, but write it down also, keep it as a checklist. But if we cover it and you are not aware of, also write it in your Excel sheet.
Prof, I'm sorry. Yeah. Do you mean you have to read it and solve it, or just read it and find out whether if it is interview you are asked to answer, you can answer it. Is that what you mean, or you want us to get solve the?
Yeah. What I want you is I want you to identify, because this is job descriptions that we want to qualify ourselves. So I want you to get the point that you don't understand what does it mean. Okay. If this, you don't know exactly what does it mean to manage all the security system. If you get that in an interview, you cannot reply back. Write it down in the Excel sheet.
Okay, thank you.
So you send me what it's not clear for you. Okay. So accordingly, we can set, we're going to have different teams. I'm going to set with each one of you guys, see what confusions you have, especially the points that was covered, but maybe you are not able to figure it out in a right way. Okay. So by doing that, we're going to start, minimizing the amount of skills that we need to enhance or learn or work on it. Okay. Is there any questions so far? Keep that as our yeah, please.
Doctor, I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, doctor, you have mentioned in the last point the security awareness training. So my concern is, for example, in an organization, there is more than 1,000 employees. So how to conduct a security awareness training for such a large people?
Actually, first, you need to have a KPI for security awareness, because as I show you in the presentation at the beginning, usually most of the problem will be related to people. Okay, so you have to have a KPI and a target. So I will do 90%, 95%. It used to be hard, right? Because you cannot have one session for all people. You have to organize many sessions and try to invite people. And of course, you need to get management approval so people will come, but it will not be done, in one shot. But right now, after using those remote tools, I mean, I used to conduct awareness since 6-7 years. It was quite hard, especially with big organization. Now using those tools, Microsoft Teams and Zoom and so on, it become very easy to do that, right? So you can have 2 sessions per week. Each session going to be, and don't do a full day session. No people will be leaving their work for a full day. It's a couple of hour session with few points. You will not explain all the policy. You're going to just show them where are the policy and some important points they need to be aware of. I'm going to share with you guys, all of you, I'm going to share some of the awareness materials that we are using in real project, because this is actually has a very high demand. It needs to be planned and so on. But my point here is not the conducting of the awareness. It's the problem. The problem is organizing, preparing the right material, and measuring the effectiveness. This is the most important point. But we'll reach this point, and it will be a presentation like the ones that we did at the beginning of our workshop.